Hi, Lisa Schermerhorn here, and welcome to my show Where Truth Lies. And I am thrilled and excited to introduce you to a friend of mine, Jeanie Davidson. We've met through this amazing movie that we're both part of called Zero Limits, and she's a transformative coach, an award-winning author, also fellow hypnotherapist. She's the creator of the LUMiN Method, which she's going to talk about, as well as living in Santa Monica, California, and three beautiful children. And Jeannie, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Lisa. I'm so happy to be here with you.
There's certain people when you meet and you connect with right away. I have the chills because I feel like I've known you for so long, even though we haven't really known each other that long. Isn't it crazy?
Yes, I feel completely the same. I felt instantly comfortable the moment I met you, and I feel that you're right. I get chills too when you say
Yeah.
it.
And some of the work we do is actually similar. We're both trained hypnotherapists, but you use other methods to help people. But I'd like people to better understand really what your journey has been. How did you get into this whole world of healing and helping people as a coach?
Well, so I'm probably true of you, but with me, it's been a life of empathy, a life of pain and healing and helping others really all your life. I don't
Right,
I feel like you've probably been this way. It's like
right,
maybe a natural skill and ability. But as far as my journey, I mean, I grew up in a family where, there was abuse and some other things that were really required healing. And
right,
even when people don't have those kinds of things, there's still other things that overlap and have that kind of
right.
uh, experience within your body, within your heart, within your soul. And so because of my experiences, I was just found myself making decisions that did not serve me.
Yeah,
And it was a series of repetitive decisions that in the moment I could not see clearly. And when I looked back, it was so obvious. And so I really sought to understand myself. And I was always helping people, but in this I had these revelations that I realized I'm not helping myself. And
right.
so when I did this, I went on a journey, a literal journey. But I will say the thing that really prompted it most of all was not feeling fulfilled with work.
Yeah,
I always aspired to do other things that I would not finish. And it was like that nagging feeling of, I know I have things that I feel called to do,
yeah,
but I would always create circumstances that got in the way. And so I wanted to understand this about myself. And this would be in relationships, it would be in money. I mean, it would be in every aspect. And so I thought, I'm smart. Why do I keep doing these things? And so I did go on a literal journey and exploring, learning, and I experimented on myself. And then, of course, as I worked with people more and more, they would keep coming to me. And then I just had these breakthroughs, these massive breakthroughs. And that's when I developed the LUMiN method because of the work I had done on myself. And then I started using with clients. And so that's really my journey. But everything opened up once I did this. And so that's why I love it so much because it really created a way that I could feel like I was in control of my destiny and
yeah.
I felt certain indecisions. And so that's what I teach
Yeah.
people.
So did you feel out of control when you were, because you were saying, being more in control, what was going on from the standpoint of, I always say our greatest wounds are our greatest gifts.
Oh,
So
yeah.
what was going on with you that you really had to go through that? I always say I went through a literal firewalk, but people go through that firewalk of, you know,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I would say the biggest thing for me was knowing my worth. And I know this is a common theme these
yeah,
days because we all are becoming more aware of how that affects our decisions. But I found myself in a very long-term relationship that was harmful to me.
yeah,
And despite my best efforts, it was like that cycle. And so once I had this epiphany of this really isn't going to change.
Yeah.
And I need to take more ownership of my life. But I mean, I was in like over 300,000 of debt in this relationship.
Wow.
It was just every day was a struggle. It was just a struggle.
How did you get out from under that?
Well, that thank you. And that
Yeah.
was it because I chose that relationship for a reason. And so
Right.
but I did feel called to it still, like I felt pulled to it. So I needed to heal myself within, and I really did. I felt so whole. So once I started doing these practices, I felt so whole within myself that it was almost like I was impervious to everything.
Wow.
And so when I needed to make a decision, it was a very easy decision. And and actually, even though I grieved it a little bit, it was like everything changed so quickly. I mean, even my kids were like, "Mom, you move on so quickly," you know. But I'm like, but I already did the things that needed to be done in
Right.
for me to be
Right.
okay. Yes.
Well, when you're in that present moment too, and you can start to look at things, and I do something called reframing where I see it from another perspective, and that can really shift in such a quick way that you
Yeah.
all of a sudden you see the other side of it and you're like, oh, okay, I get it now.
Yes. Yeah, you're right. I mean, that it is. And it is because of looking at things from different perspectives
Yeah.
and getting outside of your own self. And I think that's part of that wholeness. When you have that wholeness or you develop more and more, then you have that ability to look at things from other perspectives, whereas otherwise you're kind of confined.
Yeah. So what does wholeness feel like? For most people, they don't even know where to begin. What is that?
Oh, yes. Okay.
Yeah,
So to me, wholeness feels like it feels like, well, number one, being okay with everything that's happened.
there you
It
go.
feels like a big part of it's self-forgiveness. And I know you've heard me
Yes.
talk about that
Yeah.
because sometimes it's hard to forgive people, but yourself most of all,
Right.
because of that standard we hold ourselves to. And it just feels like love, confidence, certainty, flow. I talk a lot about flow because when I feel whole, I just feel love for self and others completely, even anyone that's hurt me, anything.
Yeah.
But also, it's like answers unfold very quickly and easily and very naturally and seamlessly. So, wholeness feels like certainty, completion, and being okay with what is, and also leaning into what can be.
Right. And I love the way you just described that because we can't control what happens to us. It's our reaction to it,
Yes.
right? And I look back at my life and saying, gosh, if I had the wisdom I have now, and that I just didn't let myself react the way I did, that I could be more present and more calm and just let it go, my life would have changed and turned out so differently.
Yeah.
And so I think about that. What was the turning point in your life where you finally like, was able to finally do that?
Well, it's interesting. I think I was listening. Actually, it's a little funny. I remembered feeling like, when they talk about the five people you're around the most, I was listening to podcasts because actually, it's interesting. I feel like I had moments I'm always growth minded,
Yeah.
always learning, but I felt myself in these periods of complacency
Mm,
where I just knew that time was suspended and there wasn't, at least it seemed like there wasn't a lot of change going on. But I almost felt like the mundaneness of my life and the way, the relationships felt and I mean, don't get me wrong, I had a lot of things to be grateful for and I'm thankful for,
right.
but there was something that just felt like, gosh, this is just it. It was a repetitive feeling. It was not going to be right for me. And so I realized part of it was the external environment. And so I reached out, I realized I was hanging around only mostly either clients, my ex, and my kids. And then, and then I realized, how am I going to grow like this? And so that was when I just started actively seeking out knowledge. And I feel like that kind of just opened up the trail. When you
Right.
think of what are attributes I want, what are the parts of me that I want to harness more? And I would just seek out different people and places that would interest me, and I'd follow that trail. And once I started doing that, it just opened up everything. And then it's like I started hearing my voice again. And so
Mm.
that was when it was it's like you go out, but then you go back in. And that was kind of my experience. But the breaking point was really, it was it was a few things. One, and I want to be careful because I don't want to be disparaging in any way. So that's why I'm a little
All
bit,
right.
yes. It was a few kind of affronts to just, it was just like obvious things that were happening in my life and relationship, that
Yeah.
it was like you could no longer ignore it. You could just no longer ignore it.
Right.
And so I had a few of those. And then one had to do with a financial piece where I just knew that it was going to be on me. Everything was going to be on me to
Wow.
fix it. And so I needed to release the weight of the relationship in order to even make it manageable. And so I did. And then, I mean, I was able to pay off all that on my own.
Wow.
Yeah. I was
A
able to,
lot.
I sold my car, bought my kids cars for cash cars, and so it sounds, I mean, I know other people, everyone has their different accomplishments or things they're proud of. But for me, this was living in more alignment with who I wanted to be, who I
Right.
believed myself to be. And so once I started doing these things, I mean, everything else unfolded. Of course, the book, the movie,
Yeah.
everything else just came so easily. And even like, I had a relationship, which now we've decided other things, but at the same time, it's like just making that progress in life that felt complacent. And it was like one thing after another, and it just unfolded.
Well, I love the words that you just said, hearing my voice again,
Thank
right?
you. Yes.
Because what people don't realize, they give their power away and they listen to all the voies outside of themselves and they let those dictate how they should be. I should be this, I should be that.
Yeah.
So, one of the things that I do for myself is looking for my own internal yes or no, or even neutral. Like, what does that feel like inside? Was it like for you to finally feel like what is your internal voice? What was your voice sounding like to you and recognizing it again?
Oh gosh, that's such a great question, Lisa. And I feel you on that with that as well. That ability to know the difference of the feelings within you to make these decisions. What that felt like was, it's funny because you do find yourself, or at least I found myself at that point, kind of vacillating between decisions. And it's like you can feel it's like resistance. It's like that
Right,
resistance, like you are contemplating one answer. I know I should do this, or even sometimes it's a should, and sometimes it's a you just can't see or feel through another way. But to me, when you feel through the other way, it's really like, it's almost like, I always think of it as like enlightenment, like a moment of enlightenment, like a spark of enlightenment. And
cool.
so it's like it's really just, to me, it just becomes so certain. It's like it's not this quandary of doubt and yes, doing a yes no list, a plus a positives and negatives list, but that's just one way to sort through your thoughts and your feelings. But really, when and it's just feels like light. And that's why here I have the LUMiN method, because
Yeah.
it feels like light. And when you're vacillating between choices that feel like a no-win either way, it feels dark and it feels heavy. And so you really can feel it in your body, and even just like, I mean, I get a feeling like in my, if you think chakras, in the
Right.
center of my body, but everywhere.
It's so interesting because yeah, I go into I've learned because there's a difference between the should versus fear of something that you want to do but have a fear. So when you go to check in, how do you learn the difference between a should that other people want you to do versus I want to do this, but I'm afraid, and you're still feeling that resistance? How do you determine the difference and how do you get around that?
Yes. Well, it's through proactive practices,
Right?
firstly, because even I once heard this concept called the rear window or the rear view mirror,
Hmm.
where if you have unresolved matters from your past, the idea is you come to terms or you reconcile everything leading up until today. And so even on a daily basis, we have experiences or that will create, this kind of like clutter inside your body
Yeah.
and your mind. And so I'm conscious to clear out that clutter. I've made a conscious effort to clear up everything to be reconciled through today or
Yeah.
yesterday. We'll say yesterday. Here I am. It's morning in California. And so this morning, I am just very conscious that I create more like a blank space or every day. And I do that in a variety of ways. Sometimes journaling, sometimes walking and working through my thoughts, sometimes visualizing, releasing things, breathing, of course,
Yeah.
meditating. I have several different meditations that I do based on what I'm feeling or sensing, and really being conscious of relationships. But oh gosh, you know what? Forgive me. I started talking and I totally forgot your question now. You were talking about the how to get to that feeling
Well,
of,
how do you know the difference between,
oh yes.
because like if you want to make a decision to go do something
Mhm.
that's outside of your comfort zone, but
Yes.
is it because you feel you should do it, or is there just something that you're meant to do, but there's fear in the way? And how
Oh,
do you
yeah.
determine the difference between the two?
Ah, yes. Okay. How do I determine the difference? Well, I will say that was the reason I started saying
Yeah,
that, because it's creating the ground where you can more easily make those decisions and you
right.
can you can be aware of the feelings. So it is feeling driven, but it is also, I feel like it is a lot of logic too. But how do I know is I really I consciously spend quiet time to myself. There
Hmm.
is, and I do also enjoy, I'm very social and I love engagement with people. And I have learned, I will say more so, even more now recently, I am like applying feedback from other people in a way that like it's like considering all options, but then I ultimately check back with myself, no matter what.
Right.
Now, fear, I feel like I've almost become fearless in a way
I love
because,
that.
yeah, well, and this is part of the zero limits. I mean, it is. It's because it is a lot of that is shedding the shoulds. And so when I shed the shoulds, very consciously through the practices every day that create a groundwork, there's not as much complication or clutter that is blocking the feelings.
Right.
And so it really is a feeling. I mean, I literally will ask myself, like, I'll ask questions. I will get very centered. Sometimes I'll do grounding, breathe, whatever, exercise, and I will just ask myself the questions. I do have very conscious things I do where I've created a vision of my life that I read. I've written it, I've revised it, and I read it aloud. And so it really becomes very clear when you have this kind of vision that you've developed for yourself, the decisions don't feel as hard. It's like it's actually, Tim Ferriss was one of the podcasts I used to listen to a lot when I back in the day. And one of his, yeah, I don't know if it was him or someone else, but they talked about the paradox of choice. And
Hmm.
so, especially, we live in America and we have so many choices. And now,
Right.
social media, we're inundated. And so, how do you make choices? It almost gets harder in a way. And I think that's why there's this rise of people wanting to be more conscious because we need to be in order to not get sucked into it all. And so, I actually believe that when I have this consistent vision that keeps showing up, when I rewrite and review every day, is this still what I want? Is this still what I want?
Yeah.
And then the choices are filtered through it. And so it's not just living by default, it's filtering decisions through the vision I've come to make with myself, edit it if I need to, and I just know. And I will do these decision making exercises, kind of like you described,
Yeah.
that if it's not obvious, I just come back to myself, presence definitely, and then the answer is already there every single time.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
love that. And thank you for the explanation because I find that people will often look at people who are healers and go, well, you already got your shit together, right?
But yeah.
Your life is so good and, I'm a mess. So, and they don't feel relatable to other
Oh,
people. And so
mhm.
that's why I like for people to understand the story. And it's just, there's methods and ways to come back, and everyone goes through these different ways. Like my way may be similar to yours, but it's different enough that different people are going to resonate with you. We have different journeys.
Yeah.
And I love that we can all come into this place to help people and resonate for those people. And even writing books, like you wrote your book, was it Flow to Freedom?
Oh, so that's a community that
That's
I
the
have.
community. Okay.
Yep. Awakening Your Inner Landscape,
Okay.
the proven path to balance, clarity, and grace.
Yeah.
hmm
So talk to me about that and how did that come about?
Oh my goodness. Okay, so I do have another book that's about three-quarters finished, and this is actually, oh my gosh, I know, I'm so glad you brought this up. I had so much resistance in finishing the other book, and I had been writing it for years, even with this relationship and everything going on. And it's funny because I didn't feel like kind of supported when I was writing it from external
Right.
circumstances. But also, even within myself, I was like, why am I overthinking this so much? But then I came to, as I was really harnessing this sense of wholeness, it became clear to me that I did not feel prepared to speak to the audience that I was speaking to in the book. And
Mm,
I didn't have clarity at the time on who I was speaking to and why. And so it really had to do with redefining the work paradigm, especially in
mm,
America, but everywhere. And making it more congruent with what really serves people because of the concept of who we are at our core. It builds into companies, and companies in a way are like a soul of a people, and
mm.
so and I have a history in corporate America and
That's
it's
so
part of
interesting.
that, and I understand how people can feel a little bit trapped, the golden handcuffs, not feeling like they have the time to find their purpose, or feeling like they're just going down a path they didn't really choose. So that's why I started that book. But really, the people I had been working with were more directly associated with my history, and just
Yeah,
a lot of actually women, men. And it's interesting because sometimes it was all kinds of ages, all just I was mentoring people, and then I had other people that were older than me, and it was just interesting to me where we come, because it really doesn't matter. It's just
right.
we all work on different things in our lives, and they show up when they show up, when it's relevant for whoever it is. But when I realized who I was speaking to was not who I felt prepared to speak to, which would have been at the time probably CEOs and
Right.
large company owners, I realized I wanted to speak more to the people who were having the struggles,
Right.
and how they could come to resolve things within themselves in order to live that way that felt like it was really authentic to them. And so once that happened, it became so seamless and easy to write the book. I mean, and I know like sometimes I'm like, oh, you wrote a book. And I was like, gosh, it was actually a lot easier. But yet here I spent all those years writing this other book. So yes.
It's so interesting you say that because I have a similar journey. I tried to write a book for 15 years
Oh my God.
and it was the Ho'oponopono, the work, the zero limits work where I released because I realized that was still holding on to resentment and anger and frustration that was blocking the flow of who I needed to speak to. And what I realized was I was actually speaking to myself. It was like my future self speaking to my past self.
Gosh, you just gave me chills when you said that, Lisa. I really, yes, I feel that. And it is because, and well, it's that continuity of
Yeah,
self. We have our past self, our future self, our present self. But
yeah.
yes, you're right. Wow, that's gorgeous. That's a beautiful story.
Yeah, and so I felt like I wanted to become the person I was looking for 25 years ago when I was so despondent and I had gone through so much trauma and everything, didn't want to be here anymore. And I was like, if I had that one person who had that wisdom, and I realized that with all the work, like it's not easy.
Yeah.
like going down into the and getting raw and really pulling up all of that old stuff.
Mm.
And I wanted to make the journey as easy as possible for people. I wanted to cut corners for people and say, okay, let's narrow this down, right? And even have you have a community. So you have the to freedom community, which is awesome because one of the things that's so hard is, okay, now I've stripped myself raw. Who am I going to talk to about this?
Oh gosh, you're so right, Lisa. That's one thing, and I've even more come into that, but and I'm sorry to hear about your journey, but I know how important it's been to bringing you
Yeah,
here. And
yeah,
it's so like I just love that you're sharing that because you're right. It goes back to where people think you are versus where you've come from and what
right,
you've endured and how that is so the pieces that connect us all. And so what you're when you're talking about like community, that's the other thing because I do feel like especially like this journey can be a lonely one sometimes or can feel like a lonely.
yes,
And I think the biggest thing we can offer each other is as we heal ourselves and come in touch with other people, and it's an ongoing process. We're all going to make decisions, and everything's not always going to be perfect. We're going to have things that happen in our families. We all, I know, many of us have, and there are these hurts that surface, and being able to manage them ourselves, yes, but also collectively and support
right.
each other. And I do feel like I was trained in my life to be very self-reliant, and I really am, but I've just felt like this amazing ability when you trust yourself, it
Right.
helps you learn who you can trust outside of yourself. And
I
so,
love that
oh
because that
yes,
is totally a lens. If you don't trust yourself, who
yeah.
else can you trust? You can't. So that's brilliant.
Thanks. Thanks. And I
That's
and
brilliant.
then it's what you it's yeah, it's really just saying what is something that is come to be. And now it's interesting because now it's like even meeting you. Like I just amazed and the beautiful women we've come to know and how it just becomes so clear. And this is something that's amazing, and I wish this for more people. And I feel like this is what's coming next. Our ability to really bond with each other in a way that we haven't. And especially with social media, AI, and everything that's coming,
Yeah,
we need each other and ourselves more than ever. And so it's just so amazing to be able to really connect that way with other people and to share that experience, those learnings, the joy of life, the fun of life,
right.
yeah, all of it.
Well, this was a great misconception because we have soul family.
Mm,
Soul family isn't necessarily your biological family.
mm, yes.
And so oftentimes people will say they feel lonely. I find it ironic that some of my closest soul family group live around the world
Mm, yes.
and that I feel more connected to people that often live, thousands of miles away than my own biological family.
Yeah.
And as we've stepped into, because we are in the fifth dimension now, we've actually moved into it. It's just that people haven't caught up to it. So they're in their old loops and they need to come out because I'm finding instant manifestation happening.
Mm, yes.
And you really have to be careful of your thoughts because you can manifest good and you can manifest not so good. So in clearing and the work that you do, will allow more and more people to come to that place of instant manifestation. I don't know if you want to speak to that.
Oh yeah. Oh gosh, Lisa, I see this is what I'm talking about. Like I just love what you're saying because this is actually like the joy of what we do because when you see people struggling through things that are I mean it is you're right. I mean it's so much that people are holding and they're holding it to themselves. Even the shoulds, even the shame, even the questioning decisions, questioning where they are. I mean, there's a lot of questions I feel like people have right
Right.
now. And what we are coming into is when we're coming to the space of self, and it's, I don't want to harp too much on self, but when we
No, but
are,
that's why we're here.
yes, it's,
We're
well, it's
not
like
here. We're here to heal the self, and then we can serve others, right? But
exactly.
it's people perceive selfish if you're here to serve the self.
Mhm.
It's you're healing the self so then you can be of service to others.
Yes. And when you're saying that, actually, you're reminding me of, I really do think of self as all.
Yes,
And so when I heal myself, well, and that kind of gets into like the collective consciousness,
right.
and that's why I love how people are embracing all of these concepts, because it's something that's always existed, but we've just been so distracted with other things. And now we're realizing how much power we have. So when you talk about instant manifestation, that's why the decision making is so important,
Yeah,
because every cause has, or every decision has an effect, and
right.
every decision has a cause. And so if you're not consciously following that trail of what is happening, or observing it, at least observing it almost from another perspective, then you're just blindly going down a path, only to realize, oh, but yeah, you're right. And it is instant manifestation. It can be instant, or it can be this progression from the decisions. But
Right.
yeah, that's how powerful we are. And
Yep.
so we must, in order to live the way we intend. And that's why when I mentioned like reading this vision I have every day, because it's just, those are my thoughts. Otherwise,
Yes.
what would my thoughts be? And I do
Right.
catch myself throughout the day. I mean, we all do it because it's protective. These protective thoughts, but when they're not serving you, being able to see them, reframe them,
Yeah.
or even to dismiss them. Because if it's not useful to you, why let it linger? Or
And
even, what is the lesson of it? Why is it showing up?
right.
And being able to process that.
And these are, a quick example of instant manifestation. And I mean, it's a funny story. I was in Mexico and there was a bathroom. I had to go and it was a parking garage. And I should know better than to go into a bathroom at a parking garage, especially in Mexico anyway. And three of the stalls were dirty. I was like, and I went into one, and of course, there's no toilet paper. And at this point, I'm so grossed out, I don't want to stay. And I go to open the door, and there's a woman standing there with a roll of toilet paper in her hand, in the palm of her hand, right in front of my stall, saying, "Do
Yeah.
you need any?" And I almost fell out of my chair because I didn't even really hear her come in.
Wow.
And then I had another instant where I was focusing on having to go to a dinner that had 17 people, and there was one person who everyone had told me was a jerk and a loudmouth and you don't want to sit near him. So what did I do? The whole ride there, I don't want to sit with this guy. I don't want to sit near him. And so what happens? I sit down and guess who sits across from me? And I'm like, oh my God, I manifested this.
Yes, you're right. Yes, you're so right. Oh my gosh. I know, but I love how you give the examples of both, because both are so true. And I'm not thinking of a negative one at the moment, or one that I was like disappointed about. Maybe it'll come to me, but I did have, actually, I had a few funny ones. Um, One was when, even with my ex, when we were actually having a really bad time, hard time. And I was going to buy some concert tickets, and I thought this will be fun for us, but I didn't want to, because I didn't know if it would work out. I didn't want to pay for them. We got in an argument or whatever.
Yeah.
So I waited. And then actually it was funny because they were sold out, but I said, let's go anyways. Maybe there's people selling them there or whatever. We get there, and I walk up to, but I had envisioned having a good time. And so I just wanted something to be peaceful and good. And so when I walked up to the one person, he was a security guard, and I told him some story, and he said that was true. And he said, "Oh, come on, come with me." And he takes us to the VIP section in the front. We saw Leonard Skinner, this in Dana Point Harbor,
Wow.
and it was the Ohana Festival. And we had a blast. It was so fun. And it was like, it was a time that was needed for, having a peace amongst chaos and
Right.
even other things like that. But I mean, it's just, and going to randomly buy flowers and finding, the right people that you just happen to have a conversation. And then you're like, it's like that light bulb, kind of like those sparks of enlightenment that just like,
Yes.
yes, this is here, this is happening. And that's kind of like that certainty when things unfold like that, you're on the right path. And so yeah, I love that. And yeah, it's certainly the things you don't want. Yeah. I mean, I had once had a car accident when I was just thinking of other things. And but yeah, just a lot. I mean, and the whole point of it is harnessing that momentum of all of it. So that way it's
Right.
creating circumstances that are really desirable.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, you and I are in this amazing movie documentary that's already won, like, what is it? It's been nominated for 24 awards and it's won 11 now.
Yeah, 11, 12, 13, something like that.
Yeah, and I know it's up for a
Amazing.
couple more. And I'm curious how you got involved in this. Like, how did you find out about it? How did you, and what prompted you to do this?
Well, okay. So when I mentioned that vision that I have, I've always had interest in film
Hmm.
and also helping people. And so it's the intersection of the two that really interests me. And so, oh gosh, I even left out. When I moved to Laguna Beach, I wrote a letter. They had already chosen someone, but I wrote a letter, found this place out of the blue, ended up there in this beautiful cottage, ocean view. But this is kind of these circumstances that unfolded to this. And so this was through the book, the forgive me, I'm drawing a blank. The oh my gosh, help me here. What's the one that why am I drawing a blank on the word? The publisher of the book had mentioned it to me. He had mentioned, I don't know why I
Brain,
just feel like on
brain
the
cram.
what is that word? What is that word? Oh, at any rate, but so it was just mentioned to me in process of the book, and then I had connected with the director, and then everything just happened seamlessly. They interviewed me. We had a series uh, of interviews, and it was like I was like I guess recommended for this, and then we ended up connecting and having more conversations to see if it was really a fit. And then fortunately, but to me, the other part was this was all part of everything that was unfolding.
Right.
It was already things that I had been creating and bringing to be. Because what is the likelihood? What is ever the likelihood we're suddenly in a film? I mean, when you think of it, it's like, how does that happen? But it doesn't surprise me because all of these things happened, every single one of them. And so when after the book and then this showing up, it was just that same certainty of knowing this is already what I've chosen. This is already what I've been here for. And I'm just hearing it and observing it and placing myself in the right circumstances.
Yeah. No, amazing. So give us a little highlight about, your story of what you talk about in the movie.
Okay, so what I talk about in the movie is, well, first of all, my son's in it with me. And he's actually been a really important part of my journey because of just, how our kids are, it's just it's part of identity and love and healing and everything that intersects of all of our stories. And it's funny too, because part of what inspires me is my son used to say, "Oh, why are you writing a book? You're never going to do that. You're not going to do that." But in a way that he just didn't really believe it. And I want to show them what's possible. And
Yeah.
so that's a little piece of it. And that's part of why my son's in it, because I want to show people what is possible. And also, I talk about really coming back to yourself and what is zero limits. Well,
Right.
zero limits is that space where you are living congruent with yourself because it is infinite. It's infinite.
Yeah.
Everything that we have and can be and are is infinite. And part of it is it's already innate. And
Yeah.
so I think of it as coming back to yourself, like as a child, but this adult version of your own inner child in a way.
Very true. It is very true. And the thing is that I find when I'm most in that flow state is when I'm in that childlike wonder, right?
Yes. And it's so much more fun. We're trained to be so serious and,
Mm,
I mean, it's kind of funny, honestly, because all it is a facade that separates us from other people.
right,
Yeah. But coming back to that, and that actually gets out of the shoulds when you're coming to the child, because children are unapologetic.
right.
And but there is this part of like this kind of elegance of being an adult where you're able to apply your insights to be able to connect with people in a different way that's more sophisticated. But then at the same time, it's heart to heart and soul to soul. It's like almost like childlike.
Yes, it
Mm,
is. And
yeah.
and seeing, you can think about what's that movie, Groundhog Day, because we
Oh,
can we can live that, right? We can get
yeah.
up, wake up on the same side of the bed, go through the same rituals and routines every day, go to work doing the same thing. There's that movie, what is that? Dave Matthews talks about ants marching on, and I see this image of all these people with their briefcases going, commuting to work. And when you start to break away from that and start doing things that are really out of your comfort zone, the growth comes in such a huge way and joy. You might have fear in the beginning, and
Mhm.
then when you can surrender and trust, that's when the joy comes in.
Yes. Yes, you're right. And you know what the interesting part is and I know you talk about a lot of resistance, but when you asked me earlier and I said that I feel like I've almost become fearless about
Yeah,
things, because the dissatisfaction is when you're allowing your life to be confined by the fears, and
yeah,
that resistance is the constant gap between where you think you're supposed to be and where you are, and what creates those feelings. But it is freeing when you start stepping into that, even if it's awkward and a little painful. It's not as painful as the regret, and knowing that somehow inside yourself you feel like I didn't give my best
yeah,
of what I feel called to do.
yeah.
So, yeah.
No, I totally agree with that. And also the idea of saying yes to things. Because
Yes.
our first response is often to say, no, I can't do that. And then I go in and go, well, why can't I do that?
Mhm.
Is there a real reason or am I just scared?
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. And it is part of that. And that gets back into that whole, when you're clear on your vision of what you want,
Yeah,
when you have the choice of yes or no to anything, it's really very obvious, because you might have, if you didn't have that awareness, then it would be easy to just give the wrong answer. Or and when I say wrong, I don't necessarily mean wrong, the answer that slows down that momentum that you want.
yeah.
Yep.
No, it's so, I love talking to you because you have this beautiful way about you and you're very comfortable and easy to be with.
Thank you.
And I find that you're very genuine, and very heart-centered. And I think that's really special. It's
Thank
really special because you see a lot of people who are out there put themselves out there and they're a facade. And there's this mask that people put on, like the used car salesman, like, hi, this is this is me. And they're like, but I find you so authentic and I really appreciate this conversation so much.
Thank
And
you.
I'm wondering, is there anything that we didn't cover that you would love to talk about? Anything that you have coming up or anything that you do that we didn't cover?
Well, sure. Well, and before I go on, though, I do want to acknowledge you, because that's when we talk about people we meet and being
Yeah.
able to have that. I feel the exact same about you. I feel that genuine way that you are. And it's I felt it instantly. I mean, even the first time I met you, I was like, wow, I feel that from you. And it's very calming and warm. And I really appreciate that about you.
Thank
And
you.
and I'm thankful that we've each had these journeys that led us to be able to see that in each other and really harness that. As far as anything else that I would want to say is is just how can you start applying these principles? And one of the best ways I believe is number one, slowing down and creating the space for reviewing your life and really just taking what is at face value.
Right.
And then and really just being open to doing the work, which I actually call unwork, because I think it's like unwork. We're unworking, and it doesn't have to be so hard. But also creating allowing yourself to dream again, because
Mm,
why not? I mean, why
right.
not? And I think sometimes people are afraid to dream because they're worried that they're going to become dissatisfied. But the bottom line is those dreams are already in there. And when you're resisting them and ignoring them, they are creating a consistent dissatisfaction. And so you're not, by trying to avoid it, you're actually creating the circumstance that you're trying to avoid. And so, but when you allow it, and even if you don't think, okay, maybe your dreams are bigger than you think are possible, fine. If you even get a semblance of that in your life and move toward this zero limits type living,
Right.
it's going to be so much more fulfilling. And you might think you're selfish. No, you're not, because it's not selfish to be true to yourself. And when you do that by example, you're giving others permission to do the same. And it helps you relate to other people and understand them better and to see them for who they are too. And it
Right.
creates this kind of really exponential effect where you can connect, and it doesn't have to be so lonely, and it doesn't have to be I mean, it's just it creates all that positive momentum.
And you know what? You're so right. And one of the things that came up that I was just thinking about was Dr. Joe Vitale himself. He's a perfect example of that. I turn around and, I remember watching him online and he was talking about he wanted to learn how to play an instrument. And this was much later on in life. I mean, I don't remember how old he said he was, but he was learning to play the saxophone and some other instruments. And now he's studying mixed martial arts and he's written something like 90 books. And the, the thing that has to happen is you just have to say yes to things. It doesn't mean you have to be the best at it
Mm.
or that other people even know about it, right? Because you started writing the book, no one knew. When I started writing 15 years ago, no one knew. I
Yeah.
sat in my own wallowing in shame and looking at this going, oh my God, I hate this. I didn't need to project that onto anyone else. But when I finally did the inner work to release the shame and the guilt and all that because something that people need to be aware of in writing a book, the book flows through exactly how you're feeling. Your fifth chakra is is a reflection of how all the other chakras are doing. So if you're feeling sad and shame and you're not feeling good, it comes out on paper.
Yes.
And I kept reading it going, I have more work to do.
Yeah.
Because it was a reflection of how I was doing back then. And I realized that I wasn't healed enough to give anyone that kind of advice.
I love your self-awareness and you're right, but I mean even just recognizing it and then keeping going with the process. You're right. I mean that is so true. And that's like that reflection of being able to look at things at face value. I mean, how
Yeah.
wise of you to have had that wisdom and to keep going. Because that's
It's
the
not
thing. It's still
pretty.
yeah, it's still a risk. And then now look at you now. I mean,
Oh,
it's so beautiful how you've been able to do that. I love
oh.
that.
Well, thank you. Well,
Mm.
this was so awesome and time went so fast. I can't believe it.
Yeah.
How can anyone reach you if they want to do some work with you or become part of your community?
Sure. So I have a website. It's jeaniedavidson.com, Jeanie Davidson, Davidson.com. And there's various buttons on there, and you can go anywhere. And I do have a book a call. I do a free 30-minute, I call it a clarity call. And I have a special assessment. I call it your light assessment because it's about uh, revealing shadows and things that are blocking you, of course, and allowing that light to come in. So I do that for free. It's just a 30-minute thing that I do. So I offer that, to people.
Yeah.
And you can do that on the website or social media. Just Google, it'll come up.
That sounds so cool. I love that. And the shadow is our gift
Yes.
because when you acknowledge it, I remember there was a point where I was doing a meditation and I wanted to see my shadow, and it was a grim reaper. And
Yeah.
then it was like this, I'm not that, the denying. And then I had this image of touching it, and it became ethereal, and it became this angel that flew away. And I remember at that moment, I realized I am both.
Mm,
And so doing the shadow work
mm.
is so critical because your shadow is also your greatest gift. It's your
Yeah.
wound that becomes that that part of you that shines, that lumen.
You actually gave me so many chills when you told your story. Wow, what a well, I mean, that is such an impactful story, and I can see it when you say it, and I can feel
Yeah.
that the truth of it. And you're right, it is because the answers are there, and they're there for all of us, and we can see them just like you did.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And thank you so much for this beautiful conversation. And we will be in touch again soon.
Yes, thanks, Lisa. Thanks for having me.
Tonight.
I know. I'll see you soon. See you shortly.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.